Please feel free to taste one. They're really yummy. Go for that one right there. It's perfect.
Hello, my name is Forrest, and I am a failed homesteader. I wanted to make this documentary because I wanted to know what it takes to succeed in this lifestyle that I've tried. One of the people that I wanted to talk to about homesteading and their own journey, he's like me in a multiverse. He's in the multiverse of somebody who committed harder to this, who is raising animals, and who is really diving deeper into homesteading.
I'm Ben Cummings, and my family and I, we have a small farm homestead outside of Woodstock, New Brunswick. We've been farming, homesteading since 2020 and sort of documenting our journey through our TV show of what it means to actually do this with no experience. We have no background in farming and homesteading and anything. So this is a learning curve for us. We're trying to figure this out. And we're to a point where we're about 60, 70% there, where we know we have a lot of book knowledge, but it's putting that into practice. And each year we get a little bit better, grow a bigger garden, grow more animals, and fill the freezer more so that instead of relying on the grocery store and the outlandish prices, that's another thing, but we now have the ability to grow a ton of our own food. I feel like I had an entire life before we started homesteading. I mean, for years I wanted to be a doctor and tried to get into med school. In Canada, it's pretty hard, so I never ended up that route. I was interested in tiny living, so ended up going and living in a camper for a bit, lived in a bus for a bit. And so I've tried so many different things and learned who I basically didn't want to be. On my trip across the country, I remember meeting and really paying attention to who I was meeting and recognizing where they were in life, what they were doing and why, and how well they were doing. Were they happy? Were they where they wanted to be? And a lot of people I recognize, I don't want to be you. I don't want to do what you're doing. I want to be me. I want to figure out a better path. I remember when I graduated university, I was at a point where I was nervous that life was, you go to school, you get a good job, you get married, you have kids, you retire and die. And I didn't want that. I still don't want that. There's more to life than just these milestones. And that's what I saw, was those milestones of, okay, get married, have kids. And then that was it. I didn't know what else there was. But when you take charge of your own food, when you are growing your own food, when you're responsible for, I mean, here we're responsible for hundreds of lives, you have a deeper meaning and a better connection to nature and to everything around you.
And although Ben is experienced in homesteading and is very knowledgeable and doing a lot, I also wanted to talk to somebody who's been doing this for years. Knowledge and experience comes hand in hand in this lifestyle because you learn the nuances of your climate and of the plants and of the systems that work. So I wanted to talk to somebody who had a lot of experience in this field.
My name is Barbara Mindell. I am 67 years old and proud of it. Well, we've owned the property for 31 or 32 years and probably been homesteading for the last 20 years, maybe 25 years.
And when I became pregnant with my first child, all of a sudden I realized I wanted to feed my child super healthy. And that is when I started learning how to garden.
The first thing we did when we bought the land was put in fruit trees because it takes 10 years, 15 years before you get anything. And we've just built the garden bigger and bigger as it goes. And yeah, so now there's a whole lot of produce coming off of this.
How much of the food that you eat do you think you grow?
Maybe 70% of the food. Yeah, I don't buy a lot. Like I say, I buy beans and legumes. It just takes a massive amount of space to grow enough chickpeas for a 25-pound bag of chickpeas. So there's certain things that I just buy in bulk. But probably 70% of the food I eat, I grow.
I think one of the more interesting aspects of this lifestyle as well is the land. You know, there's all this land around us. Not all of it is suitable, and not all of it is obtainable. You know, a lot of us are starting from scratch with the amount of money that we can invest in this. And sometimes there's a cooperative opportunity And there's this idea of the eco-village or the commune. And so I wanted to talk to somebody as well that could talk on this and who has lived and experienced homesteading with other families on the same property.
My name is Connie Quayle. I've been living on the property here since 2006. It was a collective purchase. 4 families currently that co-own the property, 22 acres. And, we set it up and developed it kind of as a permaculture community with, the values being sustainable living and living gently on the land and producing a lot of our own food. So sometimes the social benefit has been strong. Other times it's just been the financial benefit of co-ownership or the sort of the task, I guess, delegation where, there's some people who are really on maintaining the driveway and other people who are more keen on the paperwork. And so none of us has to do all of it. Can't imagine anyone not doing well in this unless you're very fiercely independent and just feel this need to do everything on your own. But it does take trust. It does take a willingness to collaborate. And it does take a willingness to not always get your own way. Intentional communities fail for so many reasons. I think one of the reasons is it takes a lot of a drive, a lot of kind of alpha personality, if you will, to get a huge project like that started. Especially like we did from raw land, where where we're sitting was forest. My house is all built of logs from the trees that were growing in this clearing. There's the challenges like a breakup, and then there's 2 people on the property who suddenly won't talk to each other, but are still co-owners. Other challenges are just when we don't agree on what to do. One of the other big challenges was in developing the property, we ended up building more houses than the zoning allowed. And one of our neighbors, I don't know who, decided that was unacceptable and reported us to the regional district, who then slapped us with a lawsuit where we were in the position of either needing to bulldoze somebody's home or figure out a different legal route. And this is why we've changed structures in part from tenants in common, where we all co-own everything, to a subdivision where now we'll each have our own lot and still have 10 acres that we share in common with our community garden and orchard and barn, and everything is still collaboratively owned. It's still the same people in the same houses doing the same things, but now we could have twice as many houses on the same piece of property. So it's one of these stupid loopholes with a government that values basically getting their cut over supporting families and people working on collaborative livings. This is my garden. I spend a lot of time out here. Right here beside you is a bit of a brassica bed, squash. They're already getting big and it's not even August yet. The ground cherries this year are doing really well for this time of year. I've already been digging some of the potatoes, but again, this is only one of my potato patches. The other one's down in the community garden. So much kale, so much chard, onions and leeks rounding out that bed. Find small patches of things works quite well. The cats love hanging out underneath the remake cloth here, so it's a cat/carrot bed. Been eating lots of beets already, the thinnings, beans, really into beans this year. Gooseberries and currants all the way along the edges. The peas are done for this year, but again, we already had too many peas. So the lettuces have started to bolt. I'm keeping some of them for seed, but the basil, a few batches of pesto in already. I always make big batches of pesto and freeze them in ice cube trays. And then just have ice cubes full of pesto that I can break out all winter long. Thyme and rosemaries and sages, tomatoes. Again, we're gonna have too many tomatoes. Other than that, I round out the garden with a ring of sort of perennials, a lot of medicinal herbs. I got my comfreys and vervains, and the new garden expansion is more medicines. I make herbal medicines and sell them at market. I do a lot of canning. I make pickles. I've already made a batch of raspberry currant jam. When there's enough corn, I'll blanch it and freeze it. Salsas. When I gather the onions and the tomatoes. I also do a lot of stuff that I just leave in the ground all year. Because I'm on such a high, well-drained hillside, I can dig potatoes almost all winter without them rotting in the ground. And the same with the leeks. And the kale grows all winter. Of course. It never stops growing. This is our community garden, and not everybody gardens here every year. We've been having trouble with water supply lately, so some people are backing off from this garden, but I still have a little plot, lots of motherwort and mullein, more potatoes, and more squash. Right now we're using it just for storing a bit of plywood, but it's all set up to have goats again if and whenever one of us or all of us decide we want to do that. This here is our community orchard. That's one of the first things we did as a land group. We wanted to get the fruit trees in the ground right away so they'd mature, and they have. Got pears and plums and peaches and cherries. The orchard, like a lot of our other community assets, or projects at least, are an opt-in, opt-out based on the year. So the people who want fruit from the orchard this year are in charge of all the weed eating, pruning, fertilizing, whatever we decide needs to be done that year. Next year it might be a different group of people, or it might be the same people, just year by year. Life changes so much that it's hard to have systems that last with resiliency for decades and decades when there's no flexibility for life changes and life choices.
Now for my story of how I got interested in homesteading. I had this experience of going to this remote island in my formative years of entering adulthood. And I saw these squatter cabins, and I thought about how amazing it would be to be free like that. I envisioned them hunting and fishing and foraging, and I romanticized this image of experiencing that for myself. That, with the combination of many other experiences in my life, one being that I grew up in a family that gardened, I experienced the difference in not the taste only, but in the benefits of it. You know, it was obvious and apparent that these vegetables were different. My filmmaking career took me into the path of exploring different ways of living and different dwellings. People living off grid, people living in tiny houses, people living in vans. It became almost like a trope or a cliche, but so many van dwellers that I talked to, that I filmed with, they all talked about eventually moving on from that lifestyle and buying a piece of land and becoming somewhat self-sufficient, and maybe doing that with other people and having a little community and building their own dwellings and maybe living out of the van temporarily and all this. There was a whole subsect of people that I was included in this counterculture of being interested in that way of life. This all sort of came together, all of these ideas and all of this concept of homesteading, in a time when the world was in a bit of strife. My partner and I, we were living in a van and we had nowhere to go, and you were supposed to stay at home. And our home was mobile, and we got dirty looks when we drove into town, and we felt unsafe. And in that time I thought, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. There's shortages in the grocery store. There's all these health concerns. And I knew that I wanted to be healthier, I wanted to be more active, I wanted to be more in tune with nature, and I wanted some housing security. So we made it happen. We bought a rural piece of land with an old house on it in 2020, and we started our homesteading journey. That was my reason for homesteading, but I was curious to know what everyone else's reasons were.
I think it's important for us to go back to knowing where our food comes from, to have a relationship with the land, to have these ecosystems, because what we're growing now, these factory farms, these massive agricultural operations, are not sustainable. It's not. And what we're gonna see over the next 5 to 10 years, potentially, is food deserts, is drought, is problems of food viability, of food availability, because farmers are being priced out of the market, and we're having to import it from other places, or we just can't grow it here. So the more that we can go back to creating these ecosystems like we have here, and more people learning how to do this stuff, the better off I believe society will be, culturally will be, in the long run. And I think that there's people that live in the city that would never want to leave, that have this idea of what farming is, or have this idea that they can't get to this place. And to those people, I think they're just lying to themselves. It takes a lot of work, and it may take a few years, and it takes sacrifice, maybe moving away from your friends and family, and that sucks, that's hard. But I would challenge anybody to truly say they can't. Because what does that mean? You can't. Not allowed? Or just not willing?
I think anybody who has a small plot of land, a little lawn, or anywhere outside that has some sunshine should be growing some kind of vegetables. I think it's really important for the future. It's good to have your own supply of food because that's very important. It's one of the basic things you need to live. I think it's for everybody, and especially if you have children. Although not everybody has land, or a lot of people rent and there's no garden space, so they could possibly be the ones that buy the produce from the farmers. But I think the more people that homestead, the better off the world will be. Yeah, more food, good food, healthy food, people will be healthier. And just gardening is hard work, and it's good, wholesome work.
It was partly a desire to just have affordable land. It's so hard to buy a piece of property on your own, especially as a young family, as we all were at the time. But also an awareness that it takes a village, in a way, to live. So there's also the value of shared labor. You know, we don't need to, each have our own goat barn. We could just build one. Food growing, I mean, especially in these remote areas, it's not always cheap or easy to get fresh produce. And there's something really beautiful and delicious and nutritious about eating our own food from our own gardens.
How important is money when homesteading?
I mean, everybody needs money to pay their rent and everything, their mortgage or whatever. Money is important, but we could do trade. Like I do a lot of trade with my fruit. So many apples, and there's so much fruit and produce in the summer. I do a lot of trading. We could basically go with a whole lot less money and a whole lot more trade.
Our first growing season was amazing. We grew an abundant amount of tomatoes and greens. In the summertime and in the fall, we didn't go to the grocery store. But then the world started to open up again, and my bank account was starting to drain. So that and a combination of family matter across the country, my mom was dying. So we needed to travel for my job, and we needed to travel to see my mom. We couldn't do that in the winter, which meant we couldn't prepare for that growing season. We had to travel in the spring instead of prepping all the seeds, all the starts, all the garden, everything. We just thought, okay, well, we'll go traveling for a bit. We'll see how my mom's doing. We'll see how my work is doing. So because we couldn't commit fully at the right time to produce a second year's garden that was bigger in scope and more grandeur and closer to the homesteading goal and dream that we had. And the third year, the same thing happened, but it was that we no longer had a cat, and we were thinking about having a family, and we wanted to do an Australia and New Zealand trip before that happened. What I learned about that was that people that really do this, they commit. They really commit to it, and I think for me, I wasn't ready to commit. I had other things I wanted to do, and committing to this meant finding a way to make it monetarily work. Not just the fact that you're saving money by growing food and you're eating healthier, and those vegetables might have cost more had you actually bought them fresh from a producer, but that there needed to be some sort of income generated from the act of homesteading. I felt like there was a sort of a need to continue stepping up, continuing to ratchet up the things that you do. For me, it was like, okay, I need to double down. I need to produce so much food that I can actually have a farm stand, but then I need to compete with other farm stands or market, bring my food to market. I was contemplating chickens, that's another commitment. Then we have to have some system built, some system in place, people basically, to look after those animals for us, which created complications, which made me not want to do that. There was always these things that I sort of needed to do to further the homesteading goal that I wasn't willing to do just based on the increased amount of commitment and time and energy and money that goes into it.
For us, homesteading has been a way to save money, because for us to invest in the quality of produce, the quality of beef, the quality of milk that we get on a regular basis, we'd blow through our bank accounts like nobody's business. We have found different ways to make money. For us personally, a lot of it comes from our TV show and our social media presence. But for a lot of homesteaders, the money comes from selling eggs, selling animals. We just sold a couple of our animals that we bought them for a couple $100 last year, sold them for an extra this year because they're more valuable, a little bit older. It's being able to figure out those little pieces. Where can you make $1? Where can you make 10? We have the ability to teach and to help, and especially that hands-on learning experience for many people is so valuable. So we're trying to get to a place where we have different sources of income. It's not just homesteading. It's not just our jobs. It is so many different pieces. Homesteading is one of those things that can be as expensive or as cheap as you really want it to be. You can start with a countertop garden or maybe a couple of chickens, and especially if those chickens free range, they can be fed virtually for free most of the year. But as you start adding things, as we've added goats, as we've added sheep, it gets more and more expensive. I mean, a packet of seeds isn't very cost prohibitive, but the time it takes to be able to nurture that is. So although money is important and we've built the society around fiat currency, around money, it's different than it was years ago because with inflation, the price of things is going up. So the value of things like growing food, things like growing animals is higher than it used to be. It used to be that animals and food was just super cheap. Wasn't worth growing, wasn't worth doing because you go to the store and get it yourself. But the quality difference now, the quality difference between a carrot that I grow here and a carrot that I buy at the store is vast. So although money is important in homesteading, it's not the thing that we're constantly thinking about. We're not obsessed with money. We can make do. A lot of things on farms are just, you figure it out. You fix this and it's a temporary fix that'll last for years and years because you don't have the time or the money to invest in it. And that's just farms. That's farms for the last 50, 100 years. For people to go back to the land or go back to even 20, 30, 40 years ago, this was more possible. Not that we can't do this, the homesteading or getting back to nature, not that it's impossible now, but it's a lot more difficult today. And I think that's because our society, at least here in Canada and throughout the United States and most of the Western world, we have a focus on money, on the responsibility of money. Things are so expensive. And so it makes it hard to be able to do this. One, to afford the land, because people can barely afford to rent, let alone to buy a house. But there's so many other factors that go into it. It's having the time to do so. If I had a normal job, I don't know how much of the capacity I'd be able to do this. Some small farms, they start up and they fail within the first year or two because they don't have the ability to sell or market. And it's hard because you're competing with these massive corporate giants that you just sell to your grocery stores. Small farms don't have that option. They don't have that opportunity. They have to go to farmers markets, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through that larger corporations, big companies, can easily do that. And it makes it hard for the little guy to make it viable, to make money. And again, I hate that it comes back to money, but realistically, I think everybody should try to figure out a way to get back to living this way. More and more people, I believe in the coming years, will notice that our food systems are broken. They're not sustainable. They're to a point where if you get, we've seen it in the last couple of years, if you have an outbreak, bird flu or whatever, and you have to kill off a flock from a massive grow barn, well, that affects the supply chain. But if you had 10 farms that all supplied this region, this area, and that's what we advocate for, is a bunch of small farms. Because if I'm good at raising sheep, or if I'm good at raising chickens, and my friend is good at growing tomatoes, we should be sharing between each other. I think everybody should be doing this, at least to some extent. That's what I try to encourage people to do, is to grow food no matter where you're at, because food is life. You are sustaining life. Whether you're growing it in a bowl on your countertop, you can regrow a lot of lettuce and whatever. You can regrow that. Buy it at the grocery store for a couple of bucks and then put it in a pot of water, let it grow. Because then you're taking charge. You have the capacity. I think a lot of people think that they're not smart enough, they're not able enough to be able to grow food, and that's just a fallacy. It's completely untrue. Some of what we do, yes, takes weeding and hard work, lugging water and lugging grain and feed, and yeah, sure. But to be able to grow a desktop garden, to be able to grow microgreens even, that have become more and more popular in the last couple of years, it's stupid simple. And I think a lot of people overcomplicate it, and it doesn't need to be that complicated. Should everybody go back to this? Yeah, absolutely. Because I think this way of living is how we are supposed to be.
Now, homesteading, for me, this was the healthiest that I've ever been. I'd go out for breakfast in the garden. I would eat peas and beans and lettuce and arugula, kale. I would just eat everything out of the garden while I harvested. And I would come in and I would eat eggs from my neighbors with zucchinis and potatoes that I grew. And all the hard work of the manual labor of tilling the garden and being out there and weeding and hauling water back and forth and building everything in the garden as well as renovating this house. I've never been that healthy in my life. So I really think that homesteading can be really powerful for somebody that needs that in their life. You know, they're not, going to the gym just doesn't compute with them. They need to actually physically see results from something. I think that a homesteading lifestyle could be very beneficial for someone like that.
I've always been into health ever since I was like 14, and I realized that food had anything to do with our health. I have started on the quest of eating properly, eating healthy, and feeding my body full of nutritious foods. There's very few things I eat that are empty calories. Almost everything I put in my body has some kind of nutritional value. As far as growing your own food, the most important thing is the soil. Soil is what makes that's what fills your food full of all the nutrition, basically. I spend a lot of time getting my soil right in my gardens. I collect seaweed by the bucketfuls. I shovel chicken and horse manure. Lime is really important. And my garden beds are, when I close them up for the winter, I put a layer of cardboard on the bottom, seaweed and a bit of lime and manure, and then I cover them with cardboard on top of that. Actually, I put all that down, then the cardboard, and then plastic on top to help break down the cardboard and keep all those micronutrients in where it's nice and warm under the plastic. And then I just put logs or something on top of the plastic. So all of my 20 vegetable beds are covered like that for the health of the soil.
I want to show you around my garden today in my homestead. This is my apricot tree. This year I got about 8 apricots. It's only 3 years old. And they are so delicious. They were like big, and I've already eaten them all, sorry. Okay, I've got tomatoes and peppers. There's peppers starting here. I do a lot of processing of the tomatoes, making sauces and ketchup and things, so I need lots of tomatoes. This is an apple tree that I'm pruning right now, summer pruning, so I can get to the apples. There's some early transparent apples here. These will be the first apples, and I make apple sauces and just eat them. They're the very first apples. This is my herb bed. Tons of lovage. This lovage is, do you know about lovage? Oh, I love lovage. There's sages and rosemaries and thymes, so that's really nice. These are champagne grapes, and my girlfriend gave this to my son for his 8th birthday. And he was wondering, oh, what a weird present that is, but now we just love the grapes. Here we have Romanesco squashes. I make zucchini relish out of this. And I decided 2 years ago not to grow all these fancy different things. I'm only growing what I'm going to use and process and make food out of. 2 beds of beets. This is winter squashes. These are raspberries, and I'm harvesting them right now. Every second day I pick, so they're ready today for me to do more picking. This is a super old pear tree, And even though they look scabby, they are the most delicious pears. Here's a blueberry. We have maybe 40 blueberries on the property. So I'm just now harvesting the blueberries. So they're ready. Go ahead and taste one if you like. I think I will too. These are grape-sized kiwis. And they're just starting out. As you can see, there's quite a few. These are ever-bearing strawberries in the boat here. I got bags and bags of strawberries in my freezer right now. This is my fall and winter garden because it's shady. I just planted lettuces from seed. And up here I have mustard greens and arugula. So this will take me through the fall and the winter. This is my arugula and lettuce bed, and I have eaten all summer from that. This is my carrot bed. I went away on a 3-week holiday, and when I came back, it was so full of mustard greens that it unfortunately took out the carrots. So I have a few straggling carrots. I've planted more now for the winter, and in the spaces I put onions. Onions and carrots are compatible, so is borage. This is a borage plant with the blue flowers. This is just one bed of the cabbages. And I've got 3 celery plants in here as well. This is parsnips that I planted in the fall last year, and they're just starting to come. So I think what I'm going to do is start harvesting them. Let's just see what's underground here. There's a nice one. It's a bit short, but so I'm going to harvest these parsnips, and these go in my sauerkraut as well. That makes really delicious sauerkraut. And I'm going to plant kohlrabi in here for the fall and winter. This is my bean bed. This side is pole beans. I've got purple and just white pole beans. And hiding down here, I've got more cabbages. This is the scarlet runners, and that's what that red flower is. And I just let the nasturtiums go wild here. There's beautiful colors. They're quite compatible with the beans, so that works out really well. This is my tomato area. You can see there's a few tomatoes started. It's still early. This is a fig tree, and it was so cold that I only had 1 fig. But now there's all kinds of figs coming for a second crop right here. And last year I ate my second crop into November, and they were really delicious. So I'm hoping that'll happen this year. Peas, I've had fantastic peas, and I just planted more for the fall. And potatoes and potatoes. This I call blueberry row. These are all blueberries down here. And I've been harvesting. Look how many are on here. Like, I harvest every second day. So like I say, today's the blueberry day. There's more here and here. More down there. Up here's the orchard. This is a 3-year-old king apple, and they get giant apples. This is a Liberty apple, and they're really prolific every year. This is a new tree. It's like maybe 5 years old, and it has a lot of apples on it. There's a walnut back there, a plum, a couple more apples here. This is 3 different kinds of pears. These will be Anjou, and over here are Bosc. These little ones, they stay pretty little. They're so sweet inside, and I can them whole, and they're really a treat. This apple gets about 600 apples on it, and they're one of the first after the early transparent. It's only me taking care of all of this. And that's our garden. We have another orchard over on the other 5 acres. It's just new, like within the last 3 years, so it's not producing a lot, but there's a few things. And that's my garden. Okay, so this is my free water system. I've got 4 barrels on this side, and I think they're like half full now because I've been using them. So, and I have it covered so there's no algae buildup on the inside. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 big ones, 2 littler ones. This side comes off of this roof and this roof. They're all plumbed together. And here I have the very same thing. I've got 4 more big tanks and 2 more little ones here. And this is how I turn it on. It's back here. Here's my pump. I turn on the water, and then I just plug it in. This used to be my chicken coop. I had, I don't know, for 20 years chickens, and we never bought a chicken except in the beginning people gave us chickens. We just kept getting more and more from the chickens that we had because we had beautiful roosters that were wonderful. And I just got tired of looking after them. I'm a vegan, I don't eat eggs, so I didn't, over the winter it's really hard. You always have to make sure that you thaw the water. It's a lot of work and you worry about them. So I decided to give up chickens and concentrate on the garden. We cleaned the coop out, hosed it all down, and I got a fridge. This is going to be my apple fridge. Got lots of firewood and more to stack in here, and there's a third bay over here. And it takes like at least 2 full bays for the winter. I like a warm house. In here is my laundry room, and it's a cold room. This is my sauerkraut fridge, and it's almost empty. I have a few fermented pickles left, but I've got beet sauerkraut, beet and cabbage. This is a burdock and cabbage. I store nuts and things that I make my fermented cashew cream cheese out of, and I've got goji berries and stuff in here. In here is my potato and beet storage. In front here, I store my beans and rice and quinoa. And in here, it's pretty dark, but you can see there's still some potatoes left in there, which I'll get rid of. And the beets are all used up now. I don't have any beets left. So I'll clean that up and get it ready and put in some fresh peat moss for storing my potatoes and my beets for the winter. This is my fruit freezer. Yesterday I harvested some huckleberries. That's how I deal with them. Then I bag them. So this is this year's, and soon these will end up in this cooler, in that freezer. Raspberries. This is what I spend all my time doing, loganberries. There's bags and bags of them. So I have a lot of fruit. I have a fridge that's different from everybody else's. There's nothing processed in there. I make a fermented cashew cream cheese. That's it right there. I'd like to give you a taste because it's so wonderful. And this is like a hummus. And in this batch, I put cumin and sauteed onions in this one. I eat the same thing every day for lunch, toasted rice cakes with these spreads and a big salad. And the salads are all from my garden. I make a massive one, and then it's here. There's not much left, but it has flowers and all kinds of things in it. I'm about ready to make another. These are the hazelnuts that I haven't even dealt with yet. They all have to come out of the shell, out of the husks. And then these are the year before's hazelnuts and walnuts that I'm still eating. That's what's left from the year before. I'll show you the canning cupboard. The canning cupboard, it's usually full. I made big batches of ketchup this year, and it's really yummy. Yeah, so that's my homestead.
A lot of people get caught up in the complex terminology around food, right? It's a marketing tactic for big companies to say all natural, less this, more that. For us, the big thing about growing organic or growing naturally is with regards to soil biology. When it comes to the nutritional density of your fruit, of your food, you're going to get more of it when you have a healthy soil. And a healthy soil means one that hasn't been treated with chemical fertilizers, with pesticides and herbicides. The more that you can have a microbiome, you've got more living in your soil than just your potatoes. There's so much of fungi, there is worms, there's an ecosystem under the ground. These phyto and micronutrients are so important to your everyday health. That's why so many people have to supplement your vitamin D, your vitamin B, your iron, because you're not getting that from your diet. You should be getting that from your diet, and you shouldn't need to supplement. But what's happened is that our food has become less and less nutritionally dense. We figured out how to grow it fast, grow it big, and grow it pretty. And a lot of these foods are picked too early and then artificially ripened on the way. And that's not how our food should be treated. Our food needs the full growing cycle to be able to get all of those sugars, to be able to get all of those pieces, all of those micro and phytonutrients that go together that makes that food good for you. I had the pleasure over the last couple of years to try real food for the first time. I had never thought that I was gonna try real food for the first time in my 30s. But I tried a grape last year, a real grape, one that I didn't get from the store. One of my friends grew it. We tried currants, we tried strawberries. There were things that we are growing or that we tried that are organic, that aren't just from the store and mass produced, that when you grow at small scale, it tastes different and it tastes better. And you don't always get that from the store. And so if you do, if you're paying the premium for the stuff at the grocery store, it's going to be more expensive. And a lot of people can't afford that. Because of where we live, we're very careful about our environmental impact. And I think that there's a lot of like eco-hippie people that will kind of co-opt this and be quote unquote tree huggers and stuff. And the fact of the matter is we want to have a future for our kids. We want to have a future that we can be happy with. And our current system of factory farming, our current system of the way that we literally just take our garbage and bury it in a landfill or burn it, it's not sustainable. It's not something that we can do long term. We've created an ecosystem, and we continue to create an ecosystem and learn how everything works together. Our sheep and goats provide manure that fertilizes our garden. Our garden grows up and feeds us or our animals. And so what we're trying to do and what we encourage other people to do is learn about not only how to grow your own food. Some people don't have the capacity, aren't able to physically or what have you, but learn how to work with nature, how to capture water, rainwater for when there's a drought. Nature works a certain way. There are laws of nature, and we are just a creature in that circle of life. The microbes, the fungus, the different animals that we have, everything can work together symbiotically, but not really the way that we've created our system today, that we've commercialized everything, that everything's factory farmed and grown way too quick and with a singular purpose, because it's not cheap and it's not effective really to do it large scale. To do what we do large scale does not work. But if you had many small farms, if you had many homesteads that could provide for your community, then everyone will be better off, because you're not worried about those poor animals that are used and abused in factory farms. And it's not just factory farms, farms for animals, it's factory farms just in general. We have so many herbicides, pesticides that are being sprayed on our food, and that people are seeing these ill health effects. And so more and more people are seeking out an alternative to that, and that's why we do what we do. And more people are willing, if you have the financial capacity, are willing to buy the higher quality food, one, because it tastes better, but two, because it's better for you. And a lot of people will just say, well, a green pepper is a green pepper, or a chicken is a chicken, it doesn't matter. That's not true. If you're counting macronutrients, your carbs, your protein, and your fat, it may be true, but that is so surface level. The truth is the phytonutrients and the micronutrients that are going into your food, that make up the bacteria that are symbiotically in their gut, that are working with them, that we have all through our bodies on inside and out. Everything works together to create this food. And it's more, a chicken is more than just protein. A cow is more than just a steak. There's so many nutrients in there. Factory farmed foods are not the same as real food, grown in the ground, grown on a small farm.
Before having my own land and before homesteading, I read lots of books about permaculture. I thought the idea, that it was another idealistic idea of being able to symbiotically create these systems. You know, I'm a system kind of thinker, and realizing, okay, these two things grow together. If you dig ditches, you can collect water, you can direct water in certain ways, and you can do this in a semi-permanent way, or a way that travels through time, as opposed to just the monoculture annual seeding of most of the food that we eat, and needing to replenish the nutrients every time through artificial fertilizers, and needing to use pesticides because you don't have the beneficial insects working for you, you know? So I really like the idea of permaculture. And for me, homesteading was a space for me to experiment in that way. And I continue to feel like I want to experiment in that way, and that I can do that even at this small scale.
Our modern culture And modern farming, modern agriculture has figured out how to do things very well, how to grow a lot of things very quickly, very big, instead of growing things that are good for you. I often say that modern agriculture is more a grow-op than it is anything else. It's not farms. Farms are, Old MacDonald had chickens, had pigs, had all of these things, right? Incorporating this ecosystem, this permaculture, these practices where a lot of people didn't necessarily call it permaculture years ago, but that's what it was. And modern society is to a point where we're creating this garbage. We're growing this garbage. We're able to grow it really fast. We're moving away from real food. And we need to be moving back towards food that actually has nutrients, that actually tastes good. Whether it's bread being baked from scratch and not coming from the store and being full of all of these additives, preservatives. If your food is being preserved and everything you eat has preservatives in it, well, then it's going in your body and being preserved. And how your body breaks things down is largely through bacteria, yes, through stomach acid, but through bacteria. And if those preservatives in your food are to prevent bacteria from growing in that food, and then you put it in your body, it's going to prevent the bacteria from consuming that food as well. We're getting away from organic practices. We're getting away from actually caring about soil biology and the micronutrients that go into our food because we're focused on money. These farms just need to make a profit. They need to sell it to the grocery stores as cheap as they can get it, so they need to get it there as cheap as possible. You're producing a lower quality product to be able to meet that threshold. Otherwise, you're not getting paid.
If you had to define permaculture, what would you say?
For me, a lot of it's about moving things once. You know, I dig rocks from my garden, and I know that the small rocks go on the driveway, and so I'll just move them onto the driveway. And it's about using what we have here on the property, keeping it on the property, instead of bringing in resources and getting rid of what we have, just sharing what we do have here on the land in a way that benefits the land, benefits us, and also allows for food production. Composting toilets are a part of that. You know, I've been emptying out one of the sides of my composting toilet where there's been human poo composting for about 3 years now that I'm ready to switch sides, so it's completely pathogen free and nourishing the nut trees and the fig tree and the currant bushes.
As we started growing more and more things, we started to recognize some of the pitfalls of, oh, we need to weed this all the time. That takes way too much time. We started to notice we were piling up manure and chicken poo, and it was disgusting, and there were just problems there. And so as we started to research, hey, what can I do with this? Where can I put that? What's this good for? We started to recognize more and more things that were better and good for more things than we had originally thought. When you can focus on, okay, planting this together will help this plant, planting this together will help this plant, using our animals to fertilize, using so many different practices of permaculture. We had done it in the last couple of years as just straight rows that we wanted. It looked like a field. And I think a lot of people grow their garden that way. You grow a straight field, that's how you grow your corn, that's how you grow your potatoes. But the reality is you need to focus on, especially small scale, on symbiosis, because you're not going to invest all that money in pesticides and herbicides. So figure out how to work with the land. And that's what we've tried to do, is figure out, okay, we're working in garden beds now instead of massive rows. We're working on a food forest, so there's things that we don't have to plant every year. There's things that we really don't have to take care of all of the time, because apple trees will just drop apples in the fall. Different perennials will just continue to grow year after year. So we just don't have to worry about it. And so a lot of these practices are both cost effective, money saving, and time saving. Welcome to our tiny homestead. We have spent the last 3 years trying to convert this into a little farm. I think it's only been the last year or so that we've realized we want it to be a farm. So we're trying to build a little farm stand and trying to grow things, raise things up such that we can sell meat and fruit and veg. And so I'll give you a little bit of tour of what we've got growing here on our farm. Last year, this garden was virtually nothing, because we had tilled it in for the first time and we were trying to figure it all out, trying to figure out what would work and we're still battling a lot of grass and weeds and things that we're trying to mitigate. We know some better practices now with regards to permaculture. To start, there is a bed of lettuce, celery. We've got our bean trellis here. This was a new thing that we tried this year to grow some pole beans. Two of the things that I have really enjoyed growing the most has been our beans and our hot peppers. Hot peppers are the thing where I love spicy food, I love hot food, so growing hot peppers for us was just a no-brainer. But these green beans are really great to be able to can and preserve, so they're things that, unlike your broccoli, cauliflower, they don't really store well, they can go bad pretty quickly, whereas beans is really easy to preserve or even freeze them. Another thing that we've been trying to do here ourselves, both in an effort to save money and try to just be more self-sufficient, has been to grow our own seed. One of the easiest ways to do that is either beans or peas. And here we're late season for these peas. We could have seeded a second crop of them, but we just didn't get around to it this year. So these beans or these peas are getting pretty big and we're letting them go to seed. So we just leave them here until fall, they'll dry. And then when we pick them, they'll be able to be saved away for seed for next year. Really the top three things that we've been able to grow this year have been our beans, our peas, and our cukes. Our cucumbers have done amazing. There's a few weeds that are taking over here now, but they've been producing like crazy. Nicole is making a ton of pickles. We're hoping that over the next couple of years, either we can focus on those 3 or 4 things or be able to figure out more things that we're good at, because we have plans to expand into more food forest, into more things, flowers and such, so that we can hopefully make a little bit more money at a few different things to diversify. We're part of a program through our grocery store that we take all of their junk produce, stuff that's going bad, stuff that they can't otherwise donate or sell. And so we get it for the animals, which has been a huge help to be able to feed everybody that we have. And we've also been able to just dabble in a bunch of different animals. We started with chickens and rabbits, and then we got into goats and sheep, and now we got pigs and chickens and quail, a little ducks. We've got a little bit of everything. So we're just trying to see what we like, and I think we've kind of figured out what we do want and why we want them. We want goats for milk. We'd love to get a cow, but we don't yet have the space. Prefer ducks to chickens. We like our pigs. Actually, I think our pigs right now are our cheapest animal, believe it or not, because of that program through the grocery store. So we're really fortunate. This is the goat pen. We started our goat journey a year ago with Nigerian dwarf goats. And now we've pared down. We had 3 goats, had up to 9 at one point, and now we are down to 2. Just a boy and a girl. Like I said, we want them for milk. And we've also considered them a little bit for meat. It's not something we want to get into like commercially raising them. It just doesn't seem worth it for us. We kind of like our sheep better for that. This little fella here is Orphe. He's our little baby boy. He was born in March. We unfortunately lost his mama shortly after he was born. And so he's been our little bottle baby. We of course weaned him, but he was one of our first little babies that we've kept. He's a boar goat, and he's going to grow up to be, I don't know, 3 or 4 times as big, probably about 150 pounds, aren't ya? We've got another one, Sandy, somewhere. I don't know if she's in the barn. Sandy is a La Mancha. She's polled, so she has no horns. She's pretty. Orphe. We, yesterday, actually, had unexpected piglets. We had been planning on trying to figure out how to get a boar, to get a male so we could bring them in and breed them, and come to find out, despite having 2 females, one must have been pregnant when she arrived, and now we have 4 babies that we weren't expecting. And we feel bad because this is kind of a mud pit. It's been really rainy here this year, so no matter how much hay and straw and wood chips we try to throw down, it's always been a mud fest here. But we made a little spot back there for them, for all the babies, and we've been able to keep them dry. But the babies seem to be doing all right. Our main goal with everything we do, sort of like the beans, like the peas, is to figure out how to treat it like an ecosystem, how to do everything together such that it works for us, so that we have pollinators, so that we have pig poop that goes in the garden as manure, so that we have beans and peas that we seed save for the next year. It just kind of, we try to make it make sense. And bees are no exception. We want to have sugar, we want to have sweets. We don't have enough maples around to tap maple trees, so there we go. We get honey, and we've had them before. We've had a couple issues where our hives have died off, so we're hoping that this year, this is our year to take them through the winter, but we'll see. But otherwise, this is We're well on our way, figuring stuff out. We love it. And I don't see us stopping anytime soon.
A lot of the world that we live in is really thinking about short-term
I agree.
gains, that kind of stuff. What about long-term sustainability
Okay.
in that world?
I think that's the way to think, and the politicians do not think long term. They're all thinking short term. That's why the world has gotten into this place. We need to think, I think the native culture thinks 7 years in advance. They plant ideas and everything for 7 years in advance. It's not for today. I myself bought 2 olive trees maybe 3 years ago. They won't produce probably till I'm dead, but it doesn't matter. My kids are going to really enjoy those olive trees. And fruit trees, they take like a long time before you get an amount, the right amount of fruit to make it worth it. But I'm always thinking of the future. That's how come I wanted to teach the kids how to sprout, because that's the future. That's why I do cooking classes and wrote the cookbooks and give information, is for the future, not necessarily for today.
There's a lot of work that goes into homesteading, especially when you've got to the point where we're trying to grow all of our own food, or at least the majority of our own food.
I still feel like I'm not ready to commit to the act of homesteading because of how much work and how much time, and because of all my other interests and wants in this life. It is big to sacrifice your life for something.
I have no idea where my time goes. Homesteading is such a huge commitment. It's a time sink, especially for us. The biggest time sink has been since we got our dairy animals, since we got the goats. I milk twice a day. So there's basically an hour of every day where I'm going out feeding, watering, milking. It can take a lot, and it depends on how much you want to bite off. I think some people end up biting off more than they can chew. I mean, we've done that mostly because we have the TV show, and it's funny to be able to commit to growing 200 chickens or growing sheep and goats and pigs and having them get out. It's funny to watch. But the reality is, for most people, especially if you are working, or both people are working and taking care of the family, it's hard. It's really hard. What matters to you? What do you need? Where's those sacrifices that you were going to make? And for me, sacrifice for years living off grid, I was effectively homeless for 2 years. But that was a sacrifice that I chose to make. And we continue to make sacrifices. I think for most people, the majority of people, if you think that you were just going to take your normal life as it stands and then add farm animals or a garden on top of that, it's not realistic. It's that sacrifice. It is figuring something different out because you want a different pace of life. You want a slower pace of life. You want a different life than you had before. Instead of having these useless time sinks, so many people are stuck on their phones, stuck in video games. Not that those things are toxic or a problem in general. Great hobbies, great that people enjoy them, but I think that you can get lost in those and forget reality. I think that you can use them as a coping mechanism, and I've used those things. Some people use alcohol, other people have different vices that makes it hard because you're trying to escape reality. And you could say that's probably what we're trying to do, but we're trying to escape the dangers of this reality that we're living in today. The world is changing so fast, and it's to a point where we don't know what to believe. We're marketed to, we're constantly got stuff in our face, telling us what to think, telling us what to believe. This man's bad because he believes this politically. This person's bad because they said that. The reality is we're living in a time where you need to make sacrifices and make choices. There's a billion different things that can take your brain power, your stamina, your capacity. So is it realistic? Is it a time sink? For every person that wants to do this, I think you personally have to decide that for yourself.
I think it's getting harder, at least in areas like here where the land values keep going up and up and up. It's one thing to work the land, to build the houses, to dig the gardens, to mill the lumber. I mean, it's a massive amount of work. And, as the land values go up, the land taxes go up, the bills keep rising. It's not really viable to only work the land. We all need a source of income somewhere else, and more income. So it's a tricky balance. Having had a collective property, where the land taxes are therefore a little bit lower, has been supportive to all of us.
I try to encourage as many people as I can to get back to the land and to homestead. If you have the capacity, just buy land, buy an acre, buy a half acre, somewhere away from the city, to just grow, to figure this out, especially if you're young. Figure it out, because I think it's getting more and more difficult by the day as prices of things are getting more and more expensive, as the world is going down this rabbit hole of late stage capitalism, where oligopolies and these massive companies own the world. It's getting more and more difficult for the normal person to just survive. So more and more people need to get back to homesteading, and it's getting harder. It is very difficult. 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't needed, but now it's necessary. And I think it's not as easy as we would like it to be. We sacrifice, our friends sacrifice. It's hard. But in this era, I think it's more important than ever. I truly believe that anybody could homestead on some scale or another. I've met people who are physically disabled, that have problems getting around, and what that comes to is the tribal or community nature of where you're at, is having the people who are good at something or able to do something all in one place. These 15-minute farming cities, if you will. Not necessarily having 15-minute cities as they're being created, but having your baker, butcher, candlestick maker, all of those artisans, those people who are so vitally important, making real food, growing real food together. Growing your own food and taking charge of what goes into your body should be for everybody. It gives you a respect for the land. It gives you a respect for animals. It gives you better respect for yourself. I recently had the opportunity to speak at an agricultural class. And I think it's a great benefit for kids, for young people, even adults that don't know these things, to figure it out.
I got a government grant through our small neighborhood foundation, and it was a community grant to make the community a better place. So I applied to teach the children in our local elementary school how to grow sprouts. I worked at the school for 12 years, and a lot of the kids' lunches were processed in plastic containers, and there was nothing alive. I think we need live foods to keep our bodies working properly, and especially our brain. So I thought, if I can teach these kids how to sprout in elementary school, they'll carry that on throughout life and be able to grow their own sprouts, which is like maximum nutrition. And even if you don't have a lot of money, you can always grow sprouts. And in the winter, it's a winter garden. Growing your own food is going to be the best thing you can do for the future, for yourself and for the planet.
So today I'm going to teach you how to grow sprouts. I usually make two different kinds. I make mung bean sprouts, and then I make this sprouting seed mix, and it has lentils, radish, alfalfa, red clover. I have these fantastic sprouting lids that I get from Mom's sprouting seeds. It's got that in there, and it fits all mason jars, wide mouth mason jars. And I take 1/4 cup for this big jar, put it in, put the lid on. I fill it with water and let it sit overnight, so 8 hours. In the morning, I drain it, and I use dish rack, and I just drain it like that, and I leave them until it's completely drained. So you want your seeds to remain moist, but not wet. You don't want water sitting in there. After the first night of sitting in water, that's the last time they sit in water. After that, twice a day, rinse them and drain them. Then I put them in this tea cozy. That keeps them warm and dark. You can use a paper bag. Don't close the paper bag because you don't want, they need the air. A seed starts in the soil in the dark. It likes the dark until it's grown, and then you want to put it in the light to green up. Mung beans don't have to be greened up, they stay white. So this is 5 days, and as you can see, there's all these little brown husks. What you want to do is remove these husks. This is my method, and I call it dehusking, and that makes it so that these sprouts will be fresh, for a whole week in your fridge. If you leave the husks on, they get that funky smell. The husk starts getting slimy and they ruin your sprouts. So you want to get rid of the husks. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to put them in the water. Get rid of the husks on the side. Okay, as you can see, the husks start floating to the top. You just give them a little shake. There's a big batch. I'm going to remove those by skimming them off the top, just like that. Those will go in my compost. There's still a few left, but not too many. That'll be okay. Look how beautiful those are without the husks. Put them back in the jar. Okay, so the next step, after you've got them nice and clean, there's barely any husks in there, you drain them. You can see the water coming out. And you want it so no drips even come out. After they've drained and there's nothing coming out and you've grown your sprouts, you want to green them up. Then I put them in the window. I usually lay them down like that. They get lots of air. And during the day, I just turn it. After they have greened up and you're ready to store them, get any kind of container. Put a nice towel inside like that. Put them in this container and put the towel on top. And then you seal it so no air gets in. And you put them in the fridge. And you can just eat away. They last for over a week that way without any husks. And that's the sprouting.
Our current consumer culture is an addiction. We're addicted to being able to find something on Amazon and buy it right away. Order it, have it there in a couple of days. And so for us, we wanted to take charge of that. We wanted to do something productive with our lives. Where we are going sociopolitically is not good. And it's sad and frustrating to see the world go down this rabbit hole of like, okay, we're going to put these people into containers. We're going to vilify this. We're going to say this is good, this is bad. You've got so many different things that's happening and happened over the past 5 to 10 years that we just don't want to be a part of. Quite frankly, I don't care. More than anything, I want to know where my food comes from. I want to know that my family, my kids are safe, healthy, and will continue to be healthy. If that means that I'm counterculture, then so be it. But I think more and more people are seeking a deeper meaning in life. And for us, we've found it in growing our own food. We've found it in homesteading.
Yeah, living like this is definitely a different way to think about society. We're creating our own community in a way. The whole property is an intentional community. And then within that property, I live in my house with 2 roommates plus me and my partner. And so we even have a community here within a community, sharing all the costs so that it's more affordable for everyone. Growing our own food so we're not participating in the market economy so much. It's definitely a pushback against capitalism in a way, and yet that system is so pervasive and so powerful that you can't function completely outside of it. And that's one of the challenges of the homesteading, is wanting to push back against that, wanting to live in an alternative world, and this being a model of like, this is possible, this is doable, and yet we still need to come up with the money somehow to pay our living expenses. You know, if I want to have bananas in my smoothies, well, I can't grow those, right? You know, and I like bananas in my morning smoothie. It's just how I am. So it's a tricky balancing act. And again, you know, the balance is different for each person and each homestead, and depending what the climate is, what the microclimate is, how much energy you have for growing your own food, how much energy you have for raising livestock and chickens, and how much tolerance you have for living with other human beings to share the same roof and share the same firewood supply. In a way, it's a counterculture, but in a way, it's also the way that humans have mostly lived for most of humanity. And I would even argue that capitalism, the capitalist neoliberal market economy, is the counterculture, the destructive counterculture that's going against how humanity has always been.
I don't ask for much. I don't want to live this expanded life where you go out and every time you're outside, you're buying stuff. I barely drive. I use very little electricity. I have solar panels. I sew all my own clothes just about, except the wool. Yeah, I think the more that we can do for ourselves is better for the planet and less monopolizing if we're all doing it in a small way, small scale.
My undergrad degree was in, I called it Cosmologies of Nature, which was a study of comparative analysis of how different peoples and different perspectives within cultures, how we perceive our connection with nature. Are we part of nature? Are we separate from it? Is nature something we steward? Is that an arrogant perspective to think that we're not part of it and we're in charge of stewarding it in the first place? I think of myself just as part of my surroundings. You know, the garden and the whole ecosystem that exists in the garden exists because I'm a part of that. Just like that, you know, the whole cycle of nutrients, the whole cycle of air. You know, the plants are producing oxygen and I'm breathing out the carbon dioxide that they need. You know, we're all in cycle, we're all in relation. I grow the medicines in my garden that nourish my body and help me with my healing. And meanwhile, I'm watering them and nourishing and helping them grow. You know, it's all reciprocal. Yeah, I'm part of this land and it's part of me.
There are people who go into homesteading with the expectation that it's going to be easy, or maybe they go into it with the expectation that farmers are dumb and I can do this. And I think we've got a lot of overeducated idiots. I would have been one of them a number of years ago. I had a college degree, I had a university degree. And so when I started homesteading, I had this vision of what it would be, of what we would do and how we would figure it out. And I think for a lot of people, when they start homesteading, you're not ready for the death. You're not ready to encounter a raccoon that's tore apart your chicken. You're not ready to have a baby goat die on you out of the blue, or a goat just drop dead on you like we had this year. And I think a lot of people who give up, stop homesteading, stop farming, they certainly have a valid reason, but I don't think that homesteading will ever leave who you are. I don't think you can really experience this lifestyle and leave it altogether. Once you've tasted real food, once you've had the ability to do this, I think you're going to do just about everything in your power to get back there. And it may be a season where you traverse out of it, but I think it's more important than ever for people to try this out, to try homesteading, to try and fail. And I think we've been successful at it as long as we have, which is only a couple of years, because I'm not afraid of failure. And maybe years down the road, we'll run into financial trouble and need to, who knows? But I think we've been able to be successful at it for the time being because we're just not afraid of failure. We continue day after day to learn.
I do not have any regrets. In fact, I would encourage everybody to grow your own food. I love my lifestyle. Every day I feel grateful that I am living this existence. I feel very lucky. It's just perfect. I love my life.
Over these 3 years of homesteading, even though I quote unquote failed, I still learned how capable I was. I still learned that I'm able to do things that take a lot of time, take a lot of effort, take a lot of commitment. I'm able to provide some food for my family if I needed to. I have some skills that I'll never forget because they weren't just learned through a book. They were ingrained into me because day in and day out, I had to perform those tasks. There's no regrets of doing this. Everything worked out. Everything was okay. And it was possibly the best time to have done it because a lot of the world was shut down, and specifically the country I was in was very shut down, and there was nothing else to do. What else could I have done? I'm happy that I did it at the time that I did. And maybe I'll do it again in the future, I don't know. Who knows what the future holds for any of us.